about how to name points, lines, planes, rays, segments. How do we notate them so that we have good, clear communication? For example, I want you all to look at that point that I just threw on the board. Everyone got it? Your entire semester grade depends on you looking at the points I'm talking about. Anyone nervous? There's two up there, and how do we distinguish them? We need to be able to clarify which one we're talking about. Therefore, in geometry, what we're going to do is we're going to label the points with letters, but more than with letters, we're going to actually label them in a very specific way. The letters will be single, capital, print, not script, not cursive letters. Okay? This way, when we want to talk about a line, we can refer to it by its points that it contains. Now, how many points does a line contain? Infinite, right? So if this line has A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z, I could effectively, even though I said single, I could go to A, B, B, C, C if I had to, but they'd still be single, large print letters, capitalized letters. So would I have to name this line by all the points? It seems kind of excessive, doesn't it? In algebra, when we ask you to, for instance, convey for us all the points that are valid as ordered pairs within like a function, y equals 2x plus 5, you didn't give us an infinite list of pairs. What did you do instead? You graphed it for us. You showed us this is a representation of it. And you're only showing us certain points, but it shows the trend where we can then say, I see what the line does. I see what ordered pairs fall in that set. We're going to do the same kind of thing with a line. If I've got some points, for instance, A, B, and C, and together they can have a line drawn between them, which means those 3 points are good, collinear, then I should be able to name that line that is formed by those points. Good idea?
Line AC.
Line AC. That would be fine. And although some people would write it like that, I don't think that's the best way to write it. What we're usually going to do is we're going to put the 2 points that we're thinking are on the line, or knowing are on the line, and then we put a notation above that to clarify what type of object it is that's indicated by that. In this case, we'll put a double-headed arrow. Arrows going both directions to show that the line is a line. It's infinitely long. And AC with a line over the top, it would be pronounced line AC. Is that the only way to name this line? Can somebody give me a different way to name this line? Tessa?
Line BC.
Line BC. Is that equally valid? Because it doesn't say it starts at B. It's going past B infinitely anyway, so it's going to contain A. There's infinite points on there. I'm not naming them all here, nor am I naming them all here. I just have to pick 2 points that are on that line. Could I say CB? Does order matter for lines? Doesn't matter at all. Picture this thing floating in space. I'm able to float around on either side, and if it's left to right BC, then on this side, it's left to right CB. So order for lines doesn't matter at all. There is an alternative notation for this. Sometimes you'll see that people will use a single lowercase cursive letter. You could say, for example, line L. Single lowercase cursive. Those are the 2 options for how you label lines. Could I call it ABC line, or line ABC? Is that like better to have 3 points on it? Act now. We'll throw in the 3rd point for free. It's not better. We don't want a 3rd point in there. We shouldn't see things like ABC. That's not valid notation for lines. But there are times that we're going to take a line and do something different with it to express more details about it. We might take this line, and instead of making it go all the way from A in both directions, we might have it start on point A and go past points B and C, but is not infinite on the A side. Does anybody know what that's called? Reason? Array. Good. It's called array. It is a section of the line. It has one endpoint. And it extends infinitely the other way. When I express this, I still want to pick 2 points. I still, for instance, could pick AC, but instead of putting the double-headed line on top, what should I put instead?
A line with one arrowhead.
Good. A line with one arrowhead, and more importantly, the arrowhead is over the C because it continues past the C, whereas over the A, there is no arrowhead. That's the starting point, kind of like in our traversability of nodes. You could leave it blank like that. In other words, the absence of an arrowhead is fine, or you can put a dot there. Either one of those is acceptable, whatever feels better to you. Are there other ways I can express this? Like we did for the line, could I do BC? Would that be equally valid? Right. It would be a ray, but would it be the same ray? No. BC ray would be that one, the purple one. That's a different ray, isn't it? I mean, they're both infinitely long. But BC would be different. We wouldn't want to claim that that is this ray. Question? What about CA? Like we did up here, we turned it around. Can I do CA? Is that all right? Do you agree it certainly is not okay this way?
Yes.
Right? Because the arrow is going the wrong way. It's not saying that A is the endpoint. This says that C is the endpoint. But more importantly, when we read this, just like we did up here, we'd say line AC. Here, if we said ray AC, we're really clearly saying A is the endpoint, and C is the ray upon which it extends through, or through which it extends. This would say that C is the endpoint, so that's a different ray. Could I say CA and make the arrow go the other way? Good, Chris. I mean, even though it conceptually sort of makes sense, you wouldn't be able to do it this way. You wouldn't be able to say ray CA and catch it verbally. So we're going to agree that when we write out rays, it always goes left to right like we read English. Okay. Third type of line. First we had infinite in both directions, then we cut it off at one end, adding one endpoint. Now we're going to cut it off at 2 ends. In other words, add 2 endpoints. What do we call that? Segment. Excellent. It's part of the lines, and it is a segment. So whereas we wrote before that it was 1 endpoint, now we know that it's got 2 endpoints. We would write it as A, C, and what would go on top?
A segment.
A segment, exactly. It would have no arrow tips on it. You may either have them explicitly having the absence of arrow tips, or you could have dots that show that they're endpoints. Now is it okay for us to go back the other way and go CA as well?
Yeah.
Good. Now order doesn't matter because it's not a one-sided shape. Can I use B? Can I go AB? I can, but would it describe the same segment? It would not. It would describe a different segment. That would be from A to B instead of A to C. Okay, 5. I have confidence in understanding lines, rays, and segments, how to notate them, how many endpoints they have, and what the acceptable ways to express it are. 3 sort of 1 note. Hands down, any questions? What about a plane? In order to speak about a plane, we talked earlier about the idea that any 3 points are coplanar. Will any 3 points determine a plane? Will they identify one specific plane? Would these 3 identify exactly one plane? The tripod, right? If I drop it on the table, it would be exactly flat through one surface. What about those 3? Would those identify exactly one plane? Yeah. So would 3 points always identify exactly one plane? Trick question. What if the 3 points are collinear? If the 3 points are collinear, how many planes run through it? Infinite. So in order for me to identify a plane, I have to have 3 non-collinear points. So when I'm talking about a plane, I have to find 3 points that are non-collinear. And name it with that. And I'll usually put the word in front of it. You know, honestly, I always think that they should have the ability to put a little parallelogram on top where we put the line segments. I think that makes sense visually and conceptually, but I've never seen it done in a book anywhere. So usually they put the word plane in front of it. So plane what? What would be acceptable names for this? ABC? Good. Could I do plane CBA? Sure, that order doesn't matter at all. Could I do plane ABD?
Yeah.
ABD, are those non-collinear? Sure, that'd be fine. Could I do plane CBD? Or CDB? CDB? BD, CDB, CDB. Okay. Which one could I not do? Which would not be an acceptable plane description? Tessa?
ABC.
Good. Plane ADC would not work because they're collinear. It doesn't describe explicitly this one plane. And just as we did up in lines, remember we had a single lowercase cursive letter? There is an opportunity to have a single uppercase cursive letter to describe the plane. You could describe this plane as plane R. But it must be cursive, it must be capital. Why must it be cursive? Why can't it just be a regular capital letter?
Because capital letter represents a point.
It does represent a point, right? If I call this plane A, how many planes go through point A? Infinite. That doesn't help me at all to say plane A, so I have to choose the letter B cursive. Lastly, what about space? Do I need to name space? I mean, I need to name planes so that you can distinguish between this one and this one, right? And I need to name lines so you can distinguish between this one and this one. But how many spaces are there? Yeah, Einstein's going to tell us there's more than one, but space is the set of all points. That's our definition. And if we accept that definition, the set of all points, how many spaces are there? One. Therefore, is there any value in trying to distinguish one space from another? There aren't multiple spaces. We won't name spaces differently. We'll just say space. Okay.